You talked about how the administration initially had this contained, but during that time, why did the administration send out more tests and work to get hospitals prepared? I mean, even today, the state of Florida is saying they can't test everyone per the administration's guidelines because they don't have enough tests.
So you're asking a couple different things there. I'll try to just give some facts. The HHS secretary said this morning that we're ramping up. We're ramping up with the commercial labs.
Why didn't they do it while it was contained? Get ahead of it.
It is being contained. And do you not think it's being contained in this country?
I'm not a doctor, I'm a lawyer.
Well, but you said it's not being contained. So are you a doctor or a lawyer when you say it's not being contained? That's false. You just said something that's not true.
The virus is spreading throughout the country, but we don't know how many people have it because there aren't enough tests.
That is not why we don't know. People are asymptomatic and don't know they have it.
From public health agencies that they don't have enough tests.
So we're ramping up production. That is the case. And as Secretary Azar made very clear, and other health professionals have made clear, we are ramping up production so that they will have more tests. You saw the airdrop of tests onto that cruise ship, for example. As I understand it, there are 300 tests going to that cruise ship. The health professionals will decide who gets those tests, who is tested first, based on different things. But there are plenty of people who can be walking around that are asymptomatic, have no idea they have the coronavirus, don't think to go get a test, have no intention of not going to work or not being in a community or being at a big social event or a sporting event. And so that's something we're all trying to look at too. I mean, Washington State and Seattle has done some social distancing because they've had obviously the preponderance, the majority of the deaths there. So states will make different decisions, but ramping up production and getting to that 1 million goal is a big deal. Dr. Fauci said something very similar this morning.
Other countries are testing 10,000 people a day. There are questions about why the U.S. didn't get out in front of this.
Other countries have a lot of infections and a lot of deaths too.
We don't know what we have, right? So what you're saying, Kellyanne, actually isn't that logically a reason to test more people?
You would just want to test people.
Well, if people want to get tested, should they not have the ability to get tested?
We're ramping up production of the tests.
But so you do think that we should have more tests?
Thankfully, I'm very happy that we're ramping up production of the tests. The goal is 1 million, ramping it up with the commercial labs.
And more than 300 million people in the country, though. Shouldn't we test more than 1 million?
Way more than that.
Right.
So,
shouldn't we test more than that?
Well, you're not a doctor either. That's obviously very clear.
I'm just asking.
That's very clear. Well, I talked to the task force. I have access to the president, the vice president, the cabinet, all the health professionals, and I asked them questions. And I asked them questions consistently about this. What I am what I am pleased to report is that the 14 deaths so far that are completely tragic and very sad in this country shows that this has been contained because the president took action, and a lot of you criticized him for doing that. He was called a xenophobe and a racist for saying no more air travel from China and going to or from. And that worked, and he's done that with other countries and continued.
I'm just asking you if you could.
Precautionary measure. Is anyone at the White House taking the test, or are they planning to take the test?
Not that I know of. Obviously, we are given the same guidelines all of you are given that the country is very familiar with at this point, which is to wash your hands with soapy warm water for at least 20 seconds. That's what I saw. I tell my kids a minute to watch the clock and to keep using some of the antibacterial wipes. I'm not going to promote any product, God forbid, but to use alcohol-based antibacterial hand sanitizer, etc. And if you don't feel well, stay home. I mean, I said that to somebody today who's not in Washington.
But there's no guidance, there's no protocol inside the White House about being tested, or there are no
Not that I'm aware of.
Kellyanne, now that the funding bill has been taken care of, what's kind of the next steps the White House wants to see Congress do to tackle the virus? Is there talk of another?
Well, I think would help is to stop politicizing it. I think that any time the Speaker of the House has their press conference or other people out there politicizing, if they're not attacking Supreme Court justices with physical harm, as the highest ranking Democrat in the Senate was doing, they're attacking the president over coronavirus, which makes no sense given the fact that the president just this morning signed the $8.3 billion bipartisan package into law and is on his way to CDC and has a task force that is available to you daily and constantly. And we'll be right here again today at about 3 p.m. Eastern. So I think the first thing Congress shouldn't do is try to score political points on something that is at hand. And try to really get those answers from the health professionals and not do the usual presumptive negativity.
Has there been any talk of additional funding being needed at this point?
It was just signed this morning. And remember, those are state, that's sort of I worked on the state opioid response grants. It's very similar in that the states, it goes by population or need, and then the state decides how best to allocate that amongst their population. But we also appreciate all the cooperation we've gotten from private sector America. So as we often say in the drug crisis, a whole of government approach, that's been the language being used by the VP on the coronavirus, no question, but it's now a whole of America approach. The VP yesterday at 3M, where they make the masks, respirators, Minnesota, obviously the pharmaceutical companies here, talking to the airline CEOs, the cruise CEOs tomorrow, trying to, down in Florida, trying to really get all of America, the private sector involved. I know that I've been told there's a CEO group that's been formed on this as well, a task force or a working group. That's all very positive because they've all got customers. And if we can help inform the customers as the government, we will do that, but they'll help to inform us also about what they're seeing and what's happening.
Did I hear you right? He is going to
Tennessee obviously recovered. It's going to take a long time to recover from that terrible storm. The people down there are suffering greatly. What's the main purpose of the president's trip there today?
To do exactly that. To show that empathy and to be there on the ground as he has done time and time again when natural disaster has struck indiscriminately throughout our country in different states to different people, and to grieve with those who have lost loved ones, to promise resources from the federal government, and to see firsthand the damage, be there with the first responders, the health professionals, as I say, the people who were directly impacted, who are our first priority, as has been the case with the hurricanes and other tornadoes and natural disasters.
Kellyanne, what's the message on cutting entitlements? The president in that forum last night.
You saw his tweet just now, right? So you're going to use the forum and not the tweet where he said he was talking about cutting deficits, not entitlements. He's protecting Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. He's made that very clear. He will continue to do that. I think he's one of 2 Republican presidential candidates in 2016 of the 17 or so that were running who made that promise, and he's made good on that promise, try as you may. I know the jobs report is probably not what people who are screaming about recession were expecting, but let's be happy for the country that the jobs report was strong and smashed expectations from some economists and lots of naysayers and critics, and that we have a net 825,000 construction jobs, over 500,000 manufacturing jobs since the election day, and that this president will continue to protect the entitlements. And we know that Biden's not going to, even if he knows what we're talking about, he's not going to protect those entitlements. Those will be in jeopardy. He said the first thing he'll do is repeal the Trump tax cuts, which has helped to Tax Cut and Job Act, which has helped to repatriate this wealth from overseas, which has helped for 9 million, 10 million or so Americans to get these bonuses or raises or both. That's helped get this strong growth, low unemployment rate humming along. So he's promised to do that. We know that when he was the vice president in this building, they didn't seem to care much about deficits. They certainly exploded them beyond what previous presidents, right, left, and center had done combined. The president made that very clear last night. But I talked to the president right after that forum. I was with him the entire time and told him there's a couple articles by the usual suspects. It was nice for me to call them articles, and some Twitter traffic that you were saying cutting entitlements. I said, I didn't say that. I always say I'm going to protect Medicare. He said, well, you said cutting. He said, I'm saying cutting the deficits. So his press secretary put that out last night, and he put it out again today. So if you're not covering his tweet and you're just covering a soundbite, then that's really disingenuous. Facts first, Joe. Anyone else?
Well, can we clarify something? Because the president seemed to be talking to Robert Thompson today from News Corp. And then when Larry was out here moments ago, he seemed to suggest that the Murdoch, Lachlan and Rupert were here for a meal. Were the Murdochs here today? Did we just miss that? I know you don't typically like to go into this.
I will never talk about
How about the meal?
Yeah.
Never talk about it.
What was served?
Next week, you said the cruise companies tomorrow. Next week, any idea other industries that may be coming through?
Well, we'd like to continue to talk to industry, whether that's over the phone or through their representatives or here at the White House or out on the road. I think you see how active this task force is, and it's the most important thing about that task force is that it is addressing a major public health issue that has been declared an emergency, a health emergency. That's the most important piece of it. But part of that is also that the vice president and his task force members and the president are talking to industry, are talking to private sectors, are talking to community leaders, first responders. The president spoke with Governor Newsom this morning. I'm sure you know that already there. And obviously the vice president was with Governor Inslee of Washington State yesterday. So we'll continue to do that too. I know that Vice President Pence has personally spoken, I believe, to all the governors, or all the governors who asked to speak with him anyway, I should say. And so we'll continue to do that. You have public health commissioners in each state. It's got a different title in different states. I know HHS, CDC, NIH, FDA, they've all been incredibly active. And the rest of our cabinet is too. That may not be as easy to see. That if a education department talking to schools about possible closures or distance learning, for example, labor, the Department of Labor talking to people about different opportunities to telework, et cetera. Not that the federal government is demanding that, but just guidance that people are having. What are my benefits? What's allowed? What am I compelled to do, not to do? So I'm sure they're taking those calls as well. The VA is involved. And that's what the Vice President means by whole of government approach. So we'll continue to talk about it and watching it. We take it very seriously, obviously, which is why the President, I think we're about 2 months into it, almost, just about, and why the President immediately took action. I happened to be in the Oval Office the day he was given the different strategies and options, and he exercised the option about the air travel, which was pretty unprecedented, and it looks like it was the right thing to do. Clearly the right thing to do in terms of China, and now some of these other countries or parts of the countries as well. Guys, have a great day. I'll be back later. Thank you.
Our friend Wall.
All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us here at Golden State Times. If you want full coverage of everything that is going on, President Trump in Tennessee, also President Trump is going to be meeting with the president of Brazil in Florida, and there's going to be a press conference or a press briefing today regarding the coronavirus at the White House. If you want full coverage of all that, make sure to visit our website, www.goldenstatetimes.com. Again, that's goldenstatetimes.com. We put the president's daily schedule on there so you know exactly what he's going to be doing for the following day. Live streams, Trump rallies, all information, politics, news, breaking news, everything on our website, www.goldenstatetimes.com, goldenstatetimes.com. Thank you so much, folks, and we'll see you there.